What does it actually look like to expand a story?
Amazing. Thank you for asking this. I got really lucky on this one because I had a pretty important document, which is Angela's memoir. She wrote a book called Rowing Against the Wind, which was essentially her entire backstory from when she grew up as a young girl in Xenia, Ohio, and knew she was gay when she was 5, but kept it a secret, and grew up in this really tough, all boys, macho Americana military family. You know, there was a lot of information around what makes an Angela Madsen. How does one become this incredible person? And I had all of this the primary source of it all. Of course, I was there in front of her all the time, but it's different when someone summarizes their own life story. So because, you know, I think I have this storytelling background and this obsession with, seafaring and these adventurers, to me, we have something, you know, you have an A plot and you have a B plot. So an A plot is sort of this superficial, at face value what the story is about. Does paraplegic woman get from point A to point B? Great. That's a pretty quantifiable, measurement of does your story deliver, this outcome of the arc. But the B plot is, well, why the hell does she need to do this? What is going on inside of this person's mind and soul that is propelling them to do something so extreme? Nobody's asking this of them, but they're insistent that this has to be done. This is part of their life destiny, whatever. So my homework, it was to really dive into the psychoanalysis of Angela and understand her and why she was making the decisions she's making. It's the same thing if you're writing a scripted film, where you have to understand the subtext of every sentence your character, the dialogue of a character is saying. Why are they saying that? Where does this come from? What is the origin story here? In documentary, there's no difference. It's just a real person in front of you. So a lot of that was deconstructing her, what I believe to be her motivations for things. So when it came time to expand the story, it said, okay, we knew the A plot, we were going to hit these major Angela's preparation, launching night, life at sea, obstacles at sea, arrival to Hawaii, hopefully. But underneath that all, I am a huge fan of stories that are not told entirely chronologically. Where do we squeak in these very intentional incisions in the plot that are going to deepen your relationship with this character and your understanding of what it is that is pushing her to do this? And so in that case, learning about her, how and why she became a paraplegic at age 33, what that unraveling of her life was, how she was able to refine sports and find herself again, very, very, very important and deeply relevant to what's pushing her. Because when you're alone on a boat in the middle of the ocean, stroking your oars for 1,000,000 times, something has got to be gnawing at you to do this. That's much deeper than an accolade or validation from the New York Times. It's profound. And so that was the homework, is, okay, let's really, and of course I don't do this in a vacuum. I mean, my house where I was living at the time, there were 1,000,000 index cards on the wall, and you throw your ideas literally around you so you can see them. But I have a crew of people that I'm constantly collaborating with and referencing, and even Angela. I mean, I think you figure out that relationship with your participant, and to what extent they should be invited in the process. But in her case, she was so self-aware already that it was really important for me to bounce ideas off of her of, what do you think if we include this to this amount? And she was also, because I did include her in the process to that extent, she also asked that I not include what I thought to be extremely pertinent information about her daughter, her only child, passing away the year before her row. Which, yes, you're surprised. She asked me not to include that in the film, and per that respect, I don't. But I mean, my God, is that not an important detail of what's driving someone to go be alone at sea for 100 days, So, yeah, I think you have to decide as the storyteller what ethical boundary makes sense to walk, because that was such a clear line for her. I was not going to overstep it. It would have crumbled the whole operation. Right. But So yeah, you got to look somewhere else. Okay, what else can we talk about that feels okay to put here?
Sure. I know a very prolific writer who ghost writes a lot of really big bestsellers, and he once said, if I'm speaking with my subject and they say, okay, I don't want you to put this thing in there, I say, okay, but we need to find something equally as good.
Yeah, exactly.
Which you did, right? Like there are these other aspects where you're like, fuck, like this is, I mean, I won't give it, but the homeless at Disneyland thing, fuck, it's kind of,
I know.
There were a few moments that, I think, it kept a story very surprising. And you don't want people to be able to predict where things are going too quickly.
Totally.
So I think you had enough good material there.
Totally.
That it worked. Yeah. I mean, also like, I don't know if you followed read much of Joan Didion's work.
I loved Joan.
She wrote The Year of Magical Thinking. Yeah. And then a year shortly, so The Year of Magical Thinking is a book about grief, and it's about losing her husband, and basically it's the best portrait of the psychology of grief that maybe has ever been told. And she talks about how what you're expected to go through in grief is this kind of linear path of denial to accept it, but he's like, everything just shatters apart, and there's nothing clean about grief. And I believe it was about a year after she wrote that book, her daughter died. Yep. And her agent apparently was like, well, you need to include the daughter, or I think it was while she was still writing the book, her daughter died. And she said, no, this book is about this period of time. And I could write another one about that, but there's, I think, something strange for storytellers to grapple with, which is you tell a story about a specific time period, but then probably if it's a book or a doc, it could be a couple years after that that you're still editing or doing post-production, and a lot of other things are going to happen during that time that you need to you kind of need to decide where that cutoff line is going to be for that story, even if new things are going to happen after the fact. And it's, I think, outside of it, you're not really thinking about how, like, where that cutoff line to the story is, because life keeps going. But you need to pick that line and have the story be self-contained.
100%. I love the sentence. I think I'm saying this correctly, but truth is subtraction. It is. It's just COVID happened during Angela. She was just about to leave, and then everything goes on lockdown. I mean, huge part in the story, which of course we're filming like crazy, and then of course the Black Lives Matter movement here in LA, and there's this revolution happening here on land while Angela is inchworming her way across the Pacific Ocean, and we're like, wow, that's a hell of a juxtaposition. Like, of course we need to include this in the film and document it, and we have terabytes of footage with all of that. Doesn't make it into the film, because ultimately when we got there, to sit down and tell this story, and it takes a million iterations to find it, but you just continue to ask yourself, what am I trying to say? What is the purpose of this specific story? What is the message that needs to get carried from beginning to end and be extremely clear? And it took us a very long time to find it. But we knew that adding COVID and Black Lives Matter and whatever else popped up was just like with Joan Didion, probably, even though I do think she writes about her daughter a little bit in it. But yeah, to your point, yes, like you own the work. I mean, it's your choice. You know what what is permitted in and out of the door of the process of the storytelling. And in this case, it just needed to be about something so specific.